Hey guys, welcome back to new video. In this video, we're gonna learn about Content Provider and Content Resolver. We are having a note-taking application. This note-taking application contains a table naming notes, and I want to export this note table with the help of my custom Content Provider, so that my another application, which is Notes Companion application, access all of my database information with the help of Content Resolver. So we're gonna build this thing in this video. So without wasting any time, let's get started. It's a very interesting video for those who are very afraid with these two things, Content Provider and Content Resolver. Let's get started. Go to the description box where you can find my initial project GitHub repository link. Download the project and open up into your Android Studio. You can find a very simple note-taking application. In this application, we are having a node database, and I want to share my node database to another application so that they can access my nodes entity and use according to their requirement. This type of communication is called inter-process communication. Android is a Linux-based operating system, and every application that is running currently in your device representing a process. And when this process tries to communicate with another process, that type of communication is called inter-process communication. And with the help of Content Provider and Content Resolver, we can perform inter-process communication very secure manner. So in this project, we are having our main application in which we are having our Content Provider. Content Provider acts as a server. Content Resolver is present in another application, and this application access my database. That means this acts as a client. Now we are gonna write first our custom content provider in my main application. In this data layer, we are having a package, and the package name would be provider, and in this provider I'm having a class, and the class name would be notes content provider. This class extend content provider, and in this we are having functions, so just override all the functions over here. Before writing the implementation, first I'm gonna create here two variables. Private latent it var my node database, and next we are having our nodes data access object. Now initialize this thing in our onCreate. So for that we are having a variable naming context, and I'm gonna initialize my context with the help of context. Sometimes it null, and due to that reason I'm simply return false over here. So node database is initialized with the help of room database builder. Pass your context. Next we are having the type, which is node database class.java, and lastly we have to pass the database name, which is nodes database. Simply build it. Now it's time to initialize node data access object with the help of node database get node DAO. I'm gonna initialize it and simply return this time true, because we have successfully initialized all of my variables. Now it's time to create few const val, which is very important in order to exposing this database to another application. So for that I'm having here companion object. The first thing which is very important here is authority. In authority, I'm using Gaur Himanshu Notes App Provider. You can give the name whatever you want. Next, we are having actual content URI, through which I'm gonna expose this whole thing. This is initialized with the help of URI.parse, and in this function, you can pass your URI string. So all URI string begin with same thing, which is content : //. Next, we are having authority / the table that you want to expose. So in my case, my table name would be notes table. Just control click on it. Here it is. Come back to notes content provider. Next I'm having here URI matcher, which eventually match the URI that Content Resolver gives us. So URI matcher, initialize this thing with URI matcher. In the constructor you can pass URI matcher no match. With the help of apply scope function, I'm gonna add here URI. In add URI you have to pass your authority, then the table name, which is notes table, and lastly the code. So this is first pattern, that's why I'm using here code 1. Next we are having one more pattern. So this first pattern gives us a list of node entity. Next URI gives us a specific node based on the node ID that user provides or Content Resolver gives us. Authority, then we are having our nodes table, and in this you have to plus the hashtag. So, and this will represent the node ID that we are receiving from the Content Resolver. And this time I'm gonna pass my code 2. This URI matcher is used to match whether the passing URI from the Content Resolver is valid or not. Once it is valid, then only we're gonna perform the operation. So now we are done with our URI matcher. It's time to perform the query. So first I'm gonna rename all these things. So this will represent a URI, P1 represent projection, this P2 represents selection, and next we are having P3, and this will represent selection arguments. P4 represent the order. Now let's perform the operation. When our URI matcher matches the URI that we are receiving, if it is a type of 1, I mean if their pattern is 1, then I'm gonna perform the query, and this pattern will eventually want a list of node entry that is present into my database. So for that I'm gonna create here query builder, and this query builder will be built with the help of support SQLite query builder. As you already know, under the hood Room database uses SQLite. So support SQLite query builder, we are having here builder, and you have to mention the table name on which you want to perform this query. So in my case it is notes table. Next we are having column which represent by the projection. Next we are having selection. So in this requirement is selection and the selection arguments. Next we are having here order by. You can simply pass your sorting order and create this query. Now it's time to perform the operation. So use run blocking dispatcher.io because this is a database operation, and with the help of our notes database I'm gonna perform this query. So simply pass your query builder. So this is the implementation for pattern 1. Now it's time to begin with our pattern 2. Now in the pattern 2 we are receiving note ID. So first let's take out the note ID. Now here I'm gonna use content URI, and in this we are having parse ID. You can simply pass your URI and this will give you the ID. Convert that ID into a integer. We are having the note ID. It's time to perform the query. So for that again I'm gonna create here query builder. With the help of support SQLite query builder, I want to perform this thing into my notes table. In place of column you can pass your projection. In place of selection, now this time we have to pass very specific thing because I want to get a single note based on the note ID. So here we are having note entity that contain ID, and in this ID I want its name which is equals to question mark. Here we are having selection argument. So selection argument is array of note ID. Convert this thing into string. If this column name contains some value, if that value is equivalent to note ID, then only it will fetch that note and give it to you. After that we are having order by, which is nonsense over here. If you passing, simply create it, and with the help of run blocking you can use dispatcher.io, perform the operation on notes database, pass your query builder. So this is for the second, and if it is not the case, our URI is totally different, on that case I'm gonna simply throw an illegal argument exception and say no URI found. So that's it for the query implementation. Simply use return in front of your query and remove this question mark operator. So we are done with our query. Now it's time to implement this get type. So get type will eventually tell us the meme type. Just like we are having image contain meme type of PNG, JPEG, etc. Just like this we are having here meme type. So first I'm gonna match my URI matcher match, pass your P naught. If it is a pattern of 1, so this will represent a list of node entity. So on that case I'm gonna return here v and d dot android. We are having here cursor, so this thing are fixed directory, and after that you can use slash. We are having here authority dot your notes table. Okay, so this will represent a directory that contain list of node entities. Second, we are having here vnd. So second pattern is actually used to get a single node item based on the node ID. vnd android cursor, this will represent a single item, that's why I'm using here item. Slash, you can use your authority, then the nodes table. Else I'm gonna return my meme type null. Alright, so use here return in front of when. So this is the implementation of my meme type. Now we're gonna perform insertion. So first let me change this thing from P naught to URI, and this one is values. So I'm gonna create here a note entity. Requirement of this thing would be title. So title is coming from values get as string, and the key is title or empty. Make sure to use here question mark operator because this is a nullable. Next we are having description. So again this is coming from values get as string, desc or empty, and simply use run blocking dispatcher.io. I'm gonna use here node data access object and perform the insertion, and simply pass my node entity, and this will give me an ID in a form of long. So just open up your insertion. Here you can see it will give me long. Come back to your nodes content provider. You can see this function return type is URI, and this URI will be created with the help of content URIs dot with appended ID. In this requirement is content URI, so we have already created that content URI on the companion object. Pass that, and next the ID. That's it. This will eventually perform the insertion. Now it's time to perform the delete, but in order to perform delete we have to create one more function in my notes.io interface. So simply copy this stuff, paste it over here. Now I want to fetch node based on the ID, and I'm gonna pass ID over here. So select asterisk from nodes where ID is equivalent to my past ID, and this will give me only a single note entity, and this is a suspend function. So now I'm gonna use this thing in my notes content provider. In the delete, first thing first, let me make this thing from p0 to URI, and here I'm using content URI dot parse id, pass the URI, and this will give me my note id. Now I'm gonna get the note from database. So here I'm gonna call this a note entity. Run blocking, this again works on dispatcher.io. I'm gonna use my node data access object and get all note id. So this function name was a little bit wrong, but still it will give me a single note entity. Now I'm gonna delete this thing. So in order to delete this entity, what you can do, again you can use here run blocking, and with the help of node data access object you can simply delete it, pass your note entity, and make sure to execute this thing in your dispatcher.io, and this will give me id. And here you can see return type of this delete is integer, so simply use a return and return the id that you have just deleted from your database. So this is for the deletion. Now it's time to perform updation. So updation is pretty much same just like we did in deletion. So first thing first, I'm going to change the name from p0 to URI. So here I'm having note id, content URIs dot parse id, pass your URI and convert this thing into integer. So first just take out the notes which is present in our database. So first just take out the note entity from the database. Run blocking, again execute this thing on dispatcher.io. Here I'm gonna use my notes data access object, get all note id, simply pass your note id. This will give you a note entity. Now it's time to update that note entity. So for that note entity, make a copy of it. In place of title, you can pass your titles, and this title is coming from this content value. So I'm gonna change this name from p1 to values and use values dot get as string, and the string name is title or empty. Next we are having a description, values get as string, description or empty, and in place of id I'm gonna pass the previous id because this is an updation. So note entity, simply pass this id. Now here we are having the updated note entity, so I'm gonna call this update note entity. Here we are having variable naming id. With the help of run blocking node data access object, I'm gonna perform the update operation. So here you can pass update note entity. Make sure to execute this run blocking on the dispatcher.io because this is a database operation, that's why. And next you have to return this id. Alright, so we are pretty much done with all the implementation. Now it's time to register this provider to your manifest. So go to your manifest, and here just below to your activity you can use here provider. So first we have to pass the authority. So simply come back to your node content provider. This is my authority. Simply copy this authority, go back to your manifest, paste it over here. Next we are having the name. So name is eventually coming in a form of data provider nodes content provider, and I want to add permission. So if user wants something from my database, he mentions some permission in their manifest, then only it is able for them to access my database. So first let's create the permission. So here we are having permission, and the permission name is Gaur Himanshu notes app dot read notes. So this is my permission. Now I want to add protection label which is normal. So this is my permission. Simply copy this permission, come back over here in the provider, and in this provider we are having permission. Simply pass that permission, and also I want to use here read permission which is pretty much same. So now I want to access my node content provider in many processes. So for that we have to enable this multi-process. Enable is true, and lastly we are having exported, so exported is also true. And yeah, we are pretty much done with our nodes content provider in our main application. So now it's time to begin with our nodes companion application. In this node companion application we're gonna use content resolver, and content resolver act as a client. So this client makes some request to our content provider, and based on that content provider will provide us the information. Sometime it will perform some operation like insert, update, delete, and sometime it will provide all of the lists of node entity that it contains into its database. So for that, go to the description box, find out my GitHub repository link for nodes companion application. Download the project and open up into your Android Studio. So first let's walk through the code. So when you open main activity, here I'm using main screen. So main screen is the same main screen that we were using in the nodes application. And here I make some modifications. So the modification is to-dos. We're gonna write a proper operation to perform updates, to perform insertion, and below we are having deletion. When you open main view model, so this main view model contains a nodes which is a mutable state flow. This has a type of list of nodes. And when you open node, so node contains three things: title, description, and ID. Now let's begin with our content resolver thing. So content resolver act as a client and content provider act as a server. That means content resolver sometimes has a request body, and this request body goes to the content provider, and based on that it will perform some operations. So let's create a file, and the file name is utils, and in this file first I'm gonna get all of the nodes from my nodes application nodes database. So function get all nodes. Requirement of this function is context, and this will return me list of node. So first I'm gonna create a list. This is a mutable list of type is node, and now it's time to use content resolver. So wall, we're gonna call this cursor. With the help of context I'm gonna grab my content resolver, and in this we are having query. So basically we are having in this content resolver 4 different top operation: query, update, delete, and insert. Okay, so basically CRUD operation. So first let's perform query. So here we have to pass the URI. So go to your notes app, and in this app we are using these 2 things, the authority and the content URI. Simply copy this thing, come back to your util file of notes companion application, paste it over here, and in place of notes table I'm going to create a const val, call this notes table, and value of this thing is notes. Simply pass your content URI over here, and in place of projection pass null, in place of selection pass null, in place of selection arg pass null, and lastly we are having order, so simply pass null. I'm gonna check whether my cursor is null or not. If it is not null, I'm gonna use here while. So basically I'm gonna perform loop. So this cursor has a function naming move to next. This function tells whether we are having next item in the nodes database or not. So if we are having some data, it will return true. If we are not having any data after the current item, then it will give you false. So here in the while I'm gonna create first variable naming id. It dot get id is an integer type, so here I'm using int. Now in this we have to pass the column index. So column index is again coming from my cursor, so it get column index or throw, and here you have to pass the column name, which is id. Similarly I'm gonna use for title, so it dot get string, it dot get column index or throw, column name would be title. Similarly for the description, it dot get string, it dot get column index or throw, and simply use here column name, which is description. Now I'm gonna use list and add a new note into it. Note id is id, in place of title pass title, in place of description simply pass description. So this will simply add it, and once we finish all of the iteration I'm gonna simply close my cursor. Lastly I'm gonna return my list. So what it will do, it will simply get all of the notes that we are having in my notes table in our notes app. So open this notes app, open up the entity, simply click on this note table. This is our entity, and here you can see my column name is id, title, and description. That's why here I'm using id, title, and description. So this is for the get all nodes. Now I want to perform insertion. So for that I'm gonna create content resolver extension naming insert node, and in this you're gonna pass the title, then description. Now in this case we have to pass something with our content resolver to my content provider, basically title and description. So for that here we have to create some kind of request body, and that request body is created with the help of content values. So here I'm gonna call this thing values, content values, create an object of this, and simply use apply, put your information. So first I'm gonna put my title, and similarly I'm gonna put my description. That's it. So this is our request body. Now it's time to post this thing to my content provider. How can we do it? Well, it's very easy. So again I'm using here extension over content resolver. So this content resolver contain one function, which is insert, and the requirement of insert is content URI. Simply pass your content URI, because in the notes app content provider, when you open it, go to content provider, and on the top we are using this content URI. So when you pass this content URI, then only your content resolver come to this place, otherwise it won't come to this place. Go to notes companion application, similarly pass your values, and that's it. This will perform the insertion. Now it's time to perform the updation. So again I'm gonna use content resolver update note. I'm gonna pass here id, then my title, then my description, and here again I'm gonna create the same thing that we did for the insertion. Content values, apply. Now I'm gonna put my title over here. So in place of value it goes titles, description is my key, and description is my value. Okay, now this time we have to create a different URI. Go to your notes app content provider. Here you can see we are having 2 different kind of URI. First URI is actually used to get the list of note entity from the notes table. Next, if you want to pass any kind of ID, then you can use second type of URI. Now in the updation, we're gonna use second type of URI because when you see this updation logic over here, what we did, we first fetch the note ID. It is only possible when you are using second URI type. Now go to your companion app, and here I'm gonna create my update URI. So for that, again I'm gonna use URI parse, and in place of string, go to the top, simply copy this thing, paste it over here, and lastly just add the ID which is coming in the form of function parameter, and that's it. You can simply perform the updation. So we are having here update. In place of URI, you can pass your update URI. Next we are having content values, pass your content values, and in place of extra you can pass null. And also I'm gonna pass one more null for my selection arguments. So this will eventually perform the updation. Similarly for deletion, we are having same thing, but we don't pass content value for deletion. So function content resolver, we are having here delete note, simply pass your ID. ID is type of integer, and in this we are having first our URI, delete URI. Copy this thing because it's pretty much same. So copy this thing, paste it over here. Similarly call delete, pass your URI, delete URI. So this will eventually perform the deletion. So we are having all the four operations. First we are having get one, then we are having insertion, then we are having updation, and then we are having delete note. Alright, so in order to access our database from other application, I mean notes application, we had to take permission. So go to your manifest and simply add that permission, which is users permission. Let me copy that permission from my notes app. So go to this manifest, Gaur Himanshu notes app read notes. Simply copy this thing, come back to your project, paste it over here. And also we have to mention one more thing which is very important, queries. In these queries we're gonna add a provider, and provider has authorities. So simply copy your authority and paste it over here. Go to your utils, this is our authority, copy this thing, come back to your manifest, paste it over here. If you don't add this piece of code over your manifest, your content resolver won't get anything from the notes application. So make sure to add this thing, it's very important. Go to your utils, and here we are pretty much done. Now it's time to use this get all nodes. So for that, go to your main activity, and here after the set content, I'm gonna use a lifecycle scope, launch a new coroutine. With the help of our main view model, I'm gonna use nodes and simply update my mutable state flow with the help of get all nodes. In place of context, you can simply use this @main activity. So this will eventually update our nodes, and this nodes is used in the main screen. And yeah, we are pretty much done with the getting all the nodes. Now it's time to execute this thing. So first I'm gonna execute my notes app, and after that I'm gonna execute my notes companion app. So let's execute notes app first. So this is our application. I'm gonna add one more node. So just some gibberish here to save it. So we are having 3 nodes in my main application. Now it's time to execute companion app, and here you can see in the notes companion app we are receiving all the information. So basically this is present in the notes app notes database, but here in the companion application we're gonna receive all the things with the help of content provider. So yeah, this is the approach of using which you can get all of the information from other application, or you can say inter-process communication. Now it's time to perform some operations. So in the update node, first we have to take the context. So here just below to our scope, I'm gonna create a context with the help of local context.current. If it is a editing case, I'm going to use context ContentResolver and perform the update, not update node. So here we have to pass 3 things, the ID, then title and description. So edit node dot value dot its ID. Next we are having here title, simply pass your title. Lastly we are having your description, so pass your description. This will eventually perform the updation logic. Now here we are having insertion. So for the insertion, again use context ContentResolver, perform insert node. In place of title, simply pass your title, then description. Here on the below, in place of deletion, I'm gonna use that same context, fetch my ContentResolver, and with the help of delete node, I'm gonna delete this. In the delete node, I'm gonna pass my ID. And once we update the value, I'm gonna update my is edit value to false, and also my edit node value will become note. And in this node, we are having ID -1. Title is empty string and description is empty string. Just execute this thing. Now click onto this item, and I want to update this thing. Save it. Alright, so let's re-execute it because we are not observing the changes. And here you can see this will update properly. See the insertion. So simply click onto this plus icon and add new one. And in place of description, I'm gonna call this add new one description. Save it. Alright, so re-execute this application. and here you can see add new one description. That means all of our 4 operation will be executed properly. Now it's time to get the real-time updates. When anything changes in my notes app note database, I want to observe the changes. How can we do it? Well, it's very easy. Go to the notes application, and in my content provider I'm gonna add something. In the update, when we perform the updation and we successfully update the database, after that I'm gonna use here context.ContentResolver, and in this we are having one function naming notify change, and this notify change will go to my content URI. Next we are having observer. So in place of observer you can simply pass null. Copy this thing, go to the delete, just before the returning simply add this thing. Here in the insert paste this content resolver notify change, so this will notify the changes. If you are observing anything onto this URI, so that thing will be triggered. Insertion, deletion and updation is the only place where we have to add this notify change. Execute this application. Okay, so now we are having these changes in this application, and now go to notes companion application. Here we're gonna create one more content provider extension that will actually use to observe the changes. So on the bottom I'm gonna do that. So for that we are having a content resolver extension function naming observe. In this we have to pass context and the URI, and this will use callback flow. Type would be list of note. In this pair of parentheses I'm going to create a variable naming observer. This is an object of content observer. In place of handler I'm going to pass null, and in this pair of parentheses we have to override one function naming on change. So I'm going to use on change that has a parameter self change and URI. So when anything got changed, anything got inserted, updated or deleted, this particular block will trigger, because in the notes application content provider I have added this particular piece of code. Go back to note companion app, and this time I'm going to use here try send. Just top of this try send I'm going to create here notes naming variable and use get all notes, pass the context. So this will eventually give me all of the notes, and I'm going to emit this thing. Now it's time to register this observer. So for that we're gonna use here register content observer. In place of URI you can pass your content URI, and make sure this content URI is exactly same that you are using over here. Otherwise this notify change will not trigger this block. Next we are having here notify for descendants. So I'm gonna pass false here. In the place of observer I'm gonna pass my observer. Next we are having await close. So await close will trigger once this flow is terminated. So here we are having unregistered content observer. Simply pass your observer. That's it for the observe. Now go to your main activity, and just below to your lifecycle scope.launch I'm gonna launch another coroutine, and this time I'm gonna use my content resolver, use observe function, pass the context which is this @main activity. In place of URI I'm gonna pass content URI. Now it's time to collect the latest changes, and this will give me a list of notes. Main view model notes, update it with the incoming newer list. So before executing our application, make sure to change this name from it to notes, and after that you can pass this notes over here and execute your application. So we are having only one item. Now I'm gonna add one more item and see whether this will update my list of notes real time or not. Save it, and here you can see now it will update our list of notes in real time. So when you click onto this delete icon, it will simply delete and update the list. And also when you want to update anything, see, this will reflect at real time. So that's it for this video. In this video we saw what is content provider and what is content resolver, and also we have created a custom content provider. With the help of that content provider we expose our notes table, and notes companion application will consume that list of note entity which is present in the notes app, notes database, and use it according to their requirement. This is all about content provider and content resolver. If you like this video, subscribe the channel and also write your comments.